But first, last night I brought you the breaking news that two of the Victorian COVID cases used to justify the extra week of Melbourne's lockdown were actually false positives. In particular, the so-called Brighton hotel case, where transmission supposedly occurred outdoors from people merely brushing past each other, that's turned out to be a fiction. And it's the story that's dominated headlines today, with 6.5 million Victorians demanding answers from the Andrews government. Why are they still locked up if none of what they were told is true? Remember, only a couple of days ago, it was a beast of a virus, with the Chief Health Officer, Brett Sutton, even warning of many deaths.
I have described it as an absolute beast because we have to run it down to the ground.
And the so-called COVID commander, out to terrify people into lockdown submission, warning of a fleeting transmission, making this so much worse, he said, than any previous outbreak.
We used to be far more focused on where there was a fair intensity of contact. What we're seeing now clearly is people who are, they're brushing past each other in a small shop. They're going around a display home. They're looking at phones in a Telstra shop. This is relatively fleeting contact. They don't know each other's names, and that's very different from where we've been before.
Only none of this is now true. In fact, this is a lockdown based on a lie. Melburnians tonight locked in their homes and their businesses shut, and an economy on its knees for what? Not a deliberate lie, perhaps, but fake news. If you like, something thought to be true, but found out to be false. Like the Adelaide lockdown last year, when the virus had supposedly been transmitted on the lid of a pizza box. After that turned out to be wrong, the Adelaide lockdown was ended early. No such luck for long-suffering Melburnians. Today, the people who have got it wrong again and again were still insisting that they'd got it right all along. It was hard to get any straight answers out of today's press conference, even when Victorian ministers and officials had egg on their face.
Where is the hard evidence that these are fleeting cases, or are we just basing this off what someone has said?
Well, we're basically off the fact that we've got 8 examples of people getting positive coronavirus infections at 5 locations from people that they don't know.
Is that a new thing?
Yeah, that is a new thing.
That people are getting COVID from strangers?
No, the people are getting COVID at this scale in these kind of outbreaks. They're not getting it from household contacts. They're not getting it from their partners.
We've
they're not getting it from their
stranger
workmates.
to stranger transmission before.
What I could absolutely say in terms of overseeing the contact tracing event, in terms of overseeing the way we put this jigsaw together, in the way that we see the response, the way this virus is behaving, it's very different to the previous cases we've seen here, and certainly here in Victoria. Over the last year, it is operating in a different way.
Brett Sutton, the bloke who called it a beast earlier in the week, well, he even tried today to claim he wasn't an alarmist. In fact, he was calm.
Are you responding with fear, and are you overreacting?
No, I agree with the Prime Minister. We shouldn't respond with fear. I think I've been calm for a year and a half.
But rather than fess up about this beast of a variant and the way it was used this week to inflict another week of lockdowns, rather than admit they'd got it all hopelessly wrong when the 2 Brighton cases turned out to be false positives, the Chief Health Officer instead switched to talk about a new variant out there with greater transmissibility, he said. That was disturbing news today.
It does appear to be the most significant in terms of transmissibility. There isn't much information about severity of illness with this variant.
Now, do not be fooled. This isn't health expertise on display today, it's political management 101. The COVID commander, who used to run buses in Britain and country trains here, he too tried to spin away their alarmist rhetoric earlier in the week about the 2 cases that turned out to be false positives, insisting that they really were super spreader events taking place.
That case says that they were told on Tuesday that they were a false negative. Is that true?
Yes and no.
No admission of the truth there. For days, expert after expert, real experts, have disputed the view of Train Man, that man there, Jerome Weimar, and warned against officials creating a climate of fear.
The numbers we've seen so far don't suggest that this is behaving as a virus hugely different to what we've seen before. It's in the same ballpark.
But because the acting Premier, the Health Minister, hapless Martin Foley, Trainman and Brett Sutton, they all needed more time to deal with this outbreak because they didn't have the contact tracing under control. They all needed cover for a 14-day lockdown rather than the 7 days we were first told. Now, I've no doubt it was always intended to be 14 days from the outset. For a disease that incubates in 14 days, it was never going to be just 7. But they were also never planning to tell us that, the truth, from the outset. It beggars belief, doesn't it, that the daily lives and livelihoods of millions are in the hands of these idiots. But it's never so bad here in Victoria that it can't get worse. Today, some details were released of the new quarantine facility that the Victorian Government has been demanding for months now. It's going to cost at least $200 million that the Commonwealth taxpayer is again tipping in to bail out Victoria. $200 million for a facility to house 500 people. That's $400,000 per bed. And it's not going to start construction, we're told, until September, to open in January, which is just about when general vaccinations should mean that quarantine is no longer necessary. If that's the best we can do to deal with a supposedly urgent problem, then Victoria really is a failed state.